Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 2, Episode 21. It's called The Calusari. So spoilers for the episode as always. So this one didn't quite live up to my expectations. And when I say my expectations, the opening scene is kind of amazing. Not in like it's a great scene way, but more in it had some ingredients of like, a gloriously kind of bad but amazing episode was kind of cooking. We've got an evil child overacting. We have an over the top death of a younger sibling and all this stuff. And then like there's some fun to be had in the episode. It's not terrible by any means, but it's a possession episode effectively, and it's just about this young boy's actually got like a spirit attached to him, and it may or may not be something to do with his dead twin brother and something else. But I think as it went on, it kind of focused a lot more on like the grandmother character, who is saying a lot of things in Romanian and is clearly trying to do incantations and stuff. It turns out in the end that she was actually just trying to like ward off the evil. She knew something bad was going on and was trying to help her grandson by overcoming it. But it was kind of erratic because sometimes she'd sort of chastise him and seem like she thought he was an evil little shit. But other times it was like she was trying to protect him and love him. Which kind of suggests that the possession was literally like taking turns, where sometimes the evil force would be in control and she'd be talking to him, but sometimes it would be the actual real little boy and he would be fine and she'd be nice to him. Plus, a surprising amount of swastikas in this episode. Now, they give a reason for it. They mention that this is an old symbol that predates its use from Nazi Germany, which I knew. I know places in Asia like have statues with this symbol on it and stuff like that, and it's kind of weird to see them. But it's because it's a symbol that existed before it was, just taken by Hitler, basically. But still interesting to do it this way, because it's kind of like they still made a choice as writers to say, hey, we're going to, maybe they just wanted to teach people that it's a symbol that predates all that stuff. I don't know, but there's a lot of drawing of swastikas as a sort of protection spell in this episode, which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird that the exorcism, if that's indeed what they're doing at the end of the episode, involves drawing that on the kid's chest. Is kind of weird, in blood no less. But like I say, it gets kind of wild in sometimes kind of fun ways, but sometimes kind of murky as to what exactly or how exactly this works. I think that was my biggest maybe critique going towards the end, is that I was kind of unsure as to the if there was any rules at all or any consistency to how this evil force operates, because early on it kind of felt like, oh, it's like an invisible best friend almost. I actually thought that's what the episode was going to be about. Because early on, like the photograph that Mulder and Scully investigate, and this guy does some like enhancements on it to see this like, electromagnetic kind of disturbance that's vaguely shaped like a person. I thought, oh, it's like an invisible best friend who's killing people for the kid. That's what I thought was happening. And him being possessed and it being the demon or whatever doing it isn't a far cry from that either, I suppose. But I thought that's what it was. But it kind of really murkies things up later in the episode, because you've got the whole thing where the grandmother is nice to him sometimes, but like deathly scared of him other times, and that kind of implies that there's a switch happening where sometimes he's the demon and sometimes he's just the boy. But then later on, there's a whole thing where the evil version, Michael, is the sort of the dead twin. So he calls him Michael, but the main kid's what was his name? Charlie. Main kid was Charlie, right? And we see like a second person who comes out and hits a nurse with a weapon and then goes home with the mother, and it's all kind of sinister. And you get the impression here that anytime we saw him acting kind of evil, like the opening scene where he was just a little shit the entire time with a really mean face and demanding that he wants his balloon and whatnot, it kind of implies that anytime that was happening, it was this other version. But there's two of them, like there's the good one and the bad one in the scene at the same time, and when he goes home with the mother, the good version, the normal version, is still lying in the hospital bed. There's literally just two of them right now, which begs the question, like, was there always two? Every time this thing shows up, is there always two of them? Is it always a physical person doing physical things? But that doesn't tie in with the opening scene, admittedly. But at the same time, you've also got an invisible, just magic force that's just throwing Scully around the room. So it kind of falls into some of the pitfalls that I tend to not like about a lot of supernatural stories, which is that there really is no consistency or any sense or resemblance of rules that the evil spirit or force has to obey. I don't like it when it's inconsistent and they can just seemingly do absolutely anything they want. I like it. Yeah, they can be powerful, they can be dangerous, but there should be some limitations, or at the very least, they should always operate in the same way. Either it's always an invisible force that's like near the boy, or it's always like a second physical body that's doing stuff, or it's always an invisible body that's doing stuff, whatever it may be. But it kind of felt like as the episode went on, it was implying like all of these things at different points in the episode had happened to some extent. And it made it kind of murky as to like, okay, is he just taking over? Like when Michael takes control, is it like another personality taking over? But the fact that there's two of them for a bit towards the end in the hospital, both existing at the same time, suggests that's not the case. Is it almost like an astral projection thing? Because after the attack happens, Charlie kind of goes to sleep, and other than, I guess, yelling and being demonic during the possession exorcism, I guess he is mostly asleep for that bit. So maybe it's kind of like when he's asleep, the bad one can go out and do stuff. I don't know. So kind of murky. I would have liked a bit more consistency there. And that's the sort of thing that really takes me away from this type of premise. Which is not to say that, again, I didn't have some fun here, because the opening scene is entertaining because this kid is just looking evil. He clearly hates that his little brother, and that's not to be confused with the dead twin who was stillborn. He's got a little brother in the opening scene who doesn't make it all the way to the opening titles, because we get like a Pet Cemetery style death, but instead of a truck, it's like the miniature train going around the fun fair or whatever it is. But yeah, Charlie is clearly pissed that the toddler's getting all the attention, that the toddler gets his balloon when the toddler lets go of their own balloon, so that the parents just grab his and give it to the toddler because the toddler's crying. And he's like, I want my balloon. And the dad's like, fine, I'll get you a new balloon. He's like, no, I want my balloon. Like, he's really, so like that's kind of entertaining. Also, a bit of a goof here that I noticed. You sometimes see this in these shows that were originally 4x3, but they've went back, and because they were filmed on film, there is the extra information at the sides caught on camera for a lot of the shots. Sometimes they have to crop a little bit and reframe and whatnot, but for a lot of it, there is just extra information on the original film that they've been able to take from. But one of the little things that can happen sometimes with there is you'll see something you're not supposed to, and there's a moment when the mum takes the toddler into the bathroom with her, and she puts like a little leash on him, like next to the sink, so she can go into the cubicle and do her business. There's a moment when she's getting into the cubicle where at the side of the stalls in the bathroom, you can see like someone's shoulder. It's like someone in like a blue shirt who's like crouched down, and I thought that was a bit weird. And then as the scene played out, I realized they were meant to be alone in here, and that was clearly just someone on the crew that was on the edge of the frame, which if this was in 4x3, you wouldn't see him, because he's in that bit at the edge. And I think they try and catch these, but I know like the Friends widescreen HD version has a few of these gremlins. Maybe not so much extras per se, although I think there's, or crew members, but I think there's some of that. But I remember like seeing a few of those episodes, and like you basically have moments where like a character is just in that part of the frame, like where they're outside of the 4x3 zone and they're in the 16:9 zone. And because they weren't in the original edit, they would use the shot when you can see their lips moving, even though they're not actually talking in the sound mix, because people wouldn't be able to see it. So you sort of get this glimpse of how they've edited around and kind of reconstructed how the conversation flows. And then you can sort of like see how they've cheated a little bit in the HD version. So To be fair, I haven't noticed much of that here. I mean, obviously, the main thing I've noticed in this X-Files remaster, more than anything, is typically once or twice per episode, there'll be one or two shots that are shit. Where they clearly didn't have access to the original film and they've had to just blow up the SD like footage to slot it in here, and it looks really soft and fuzzy compared to everything else. Which is fine. I'd rather have this version with a few shots like that and not have it at all. So, like, it's not a complaint, but it's the main thing I've noticed. But this was just a little chuckle. But I had a little chuckle to myself when I noticed the crew member at the edge of the screen. Anyway, that's not important to the episode, though. So yeah, the toddler gets out somehow from the leash, even though it seems to be impossible for them to do it. They mentioned that in the next scene. But they stumble out onto the little train track with this little miniature train for children's going around, and the brakes don't work. Again, kind of magical force intervention kind of thing. And the parents see him and they go running for him, and you just see the balloon go up from when he gets hit. Obviously, they don't show the impact, but you see the balloon go up. And that's your big opening scene. And it's entertaining. The evil kids on this show have been funny up until now, and this is no exception. But I think that's maybe the problem, is that it's so murky with whether or not the kid is just evil or if there's something more convoluted going on, and it is more convoluted than that you don't just get to enjoy the kid being an evil little shit for the rest of the episode and doing his overacting. We get these different, like, versions of him, and we're not really sure at some points which one we're getting, because we don't even realize there's more than one version until later in the episode in some ways. So regardless, though, entertaining opening. I think it's interesting. Mulder jumps to some conclusions like he always does, although I really felt him stretching here a little bit, because he brings up the photograph from the crime scene and he points out the balloon, and his smoking gun for why this is something X-Files-y is because the balloon is not going up, it's going horizontally. And I was so thankful that Scully immediately said, Mulder, there's this thing called wind. That's not weird. And Mulder fires back by saying he talked to like someone at the weather station or whatever, and apparently on that day the wind was blowing like south and this is going east or whatever the directions were. And I'm like, okay, that is fair if you happen to find that information out. But it's the bit of a leap for me that he bothered to check. Right? That he didn't just go like Scully did and just to say, oh, the wind's making it blow that way, and then just moved on with his life. The fact that he went to check because he thought it was suspicious that the balloon was not going straight up is a leap. Even for Mulder, it's a leap. But that's fine. Whatever. I suppose he's also got the other evidence, but again, I don't know what order he got these evidence in, but the guy here who enhances the photograph, and we get this sort of like faint like image of like a body shape that's helping the young kid out onto the track, making me think, of course, we had just a complete invisible like ghost or person or something helping him. But this leads to finding out about the family and finding out about the whole thing. Scully's interpretation of events at this point in the episode, after they meet the family for the first time and they see a few weird things, is that she thinks it's Munchausen by proxy, right? She thinks that probably the grandmother is the most likely suspect, but that someone is making the kids sick well, I guess I'm just explaining what Munchausen by proxy is. So regular Munchausen is when you just basically somehow give yourself symptoms of an illness of some kind, but by proxy is when you do it to someone else. And you know, it was a plot point in The Sixth Sense, if you did another example of it. But she thinks that's what this is because the kid has been like the toddler that died even had been in hospital like 10 times for various things, and he was only 2 years old. The current kid Charlie has also been ill a lot in his life. So she's suspicious that something like that's going on. How that necessarily relates to any of what Mulder saw in this photograph or whatever from the balloon incident is, you know, like it doesn't necessarily connect. but she does think that something's going on in this sense. And they try and get the kid out with social services and say we have to have a talk about all this stuff. They're not particularly excited about it, but they want to take the kid down to wherever to have the interview. And when the dad goes to drive him, we get the dad's death, which is he's fixing the garage door, and basically his tie gets, magically kind of tangled up in it, and he ends up hanging. I did appreciate this in the sense that the garage door opens as like this is happening. So Mulder and Scully, who have just left the house, are getting into their car, and they see the garage door open up, and you just see him dangling there, and it's like a real sort of like call to like action moment for them to like, oh shit, what's going on over there? That's very random from their perspective. So they run over, and Mulder tries to hold him up, but it's too late. He's gone, and the only person who saw anything is this kid who was trapped in the car watching this happen. Presumably the regular boy was trapped watching it happen. But again, this was an invisible force. So up until this point, it's more just like there's an invisible person doing all this bad stuff near this kid, right? It doesn't murky things up until a bit after. But this is where, because there's been a death in the house, they start searching more thoroughly. And the grandmother has been like doing rituals with dead roosters, like sacrificing roosters in her room. She's got like a little ceremonial table and some various things and whatever. And later on, we see that she's got this group of guys. What was the name of the episode? Was their title? The Calusari. They come over and they've got the robes and they want to do this thing. They're all speaking Romanian, and they even do a thing where they're doing like a spell or like a ritual. And like the flame coming up from like the center of their circle has like Charlie inside the flame, or presumably the evil ones inside the flame. This is kind of what finally makes the mother. Well, not so, that specific. I mean, she kind of breaks here because the grandmother kind of like grabs the boy and takes him inside. I may be mixing up two scenes here because we might meet those guys at a slightly different time than when she grabs him inside. But it eventually leads to the grandmother's death, though, because he, and I can't believe I'm going to say these words, but Charlie, or the demon possessing Charlie, unleashes two roosters that she had in the room for sacrificial purposes, and they peck her to death, which, as I'm saying that out loud, it sounds like it should be the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. Sadly, it's a little restrained, perhaps, than what I was hoping for. Because it's a whole thing where like Mulder and Scully, the social service ladies like runs out and says, "Hey, the old woman's grabbed the kid. Come inside and help." And they go running in, and they go up to the door, and when they open it, she's lying there dead. And once again, this is the second crime scene in this house, this episode. But throughout the episode, they've spoken to the mother and father. Obviously, the father's dead by this point, but they've pieced together that the mom's Romanian. She moved here with the dad, a number of years ago. But when they had their kid and they had like the stillborn twin, the grandmother insisted on moving here too and trying to do rituals, like a separation ritual. That's the other weird thing about this, is that they sort of like reveal this twin thing at one point. When after this scene, they go to the hospital and the social services lady's talking to the kid. He mentions something about a Michael, and this makes the mother react. And this is where we find out that there was a twin who died at birth. And she's like, "Oh, we never told him about that. He couldn't know about that. That's strange. That's supernatural, whatever." And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I was okay with that, because up until that point, it did feel like some sort of malicious spirit was helping, or not even helping, but doing stuff in like Charlie's name to like keep Charlie to themselves or whatever it was. Any dead twin, like an evil ghost of a dead twin, seemed like a fine idea for that. However, whenever the Calusari start talking about it, when Mulder asks one of them some questions, every time he talks to them, they basically just say, "Oh yeah, this is like, he's went by many names: Satan, Lucifer, Hitler." I'm like, really? I mean, Hitler's pretty bad, but we're saying that Hitler was just possessed by Satan. That's how we're justifying. Well, not justifying, but we're retconning that reason into it, which really stuck out, especially since the swastikas are kicking about in this episode. So it's already kind of on the brain in that sense. So we get to this point in the episode, and we've got these conflicting things. But when it all goes down is when evil Michael version of the kid comes out in physical form and hits the nurse, and then pretends to be Charlie so the mum will take him home. And I would say this is like a first time thing, like the spirits elevating to like a new power or something because it's getting stronger or whatever. But to be honest, like the way the evil kid acts is exactly like the opening scene, which makes me think that, no, this was the evil kid from the opening scene, was this Michael version of him. So he's physically there, but there's also the spirit stuff and like invisible things happening on top of that. Like, you know, there was a lot going on here that it felt like it didn't all fit together quite well, or maybe there was just a couple of extra scenes that tried to explain it all together and they just cut them for time or whatever, because they didn't think it was important, but it bugged me. But regardless, the mum takes him home, even though she suspects something's up, because he's like, no, you can't talk to the doctors. They said I could go home. Take me home right now. So she takes him home, and she tries to do a ritual herself when she realizes, like, what he is, effectively. And he rubs salt in the wound, because he even says, I want to go to the park tomorrow. I want a balloon, mum. And he sort of, like, you know, really emphasizes that, like, yeah, I killed your other child, and I got away with it. So you're going to, like, treat me like I'm your baby boy. So yeah, it does get. I mean, I do kind of enjoy how wailed it gets at the end when Mulder and Scully see her leave with the kid. They go, "Oh my God, she took Charlie. He's meant to be staying here." But then they go to the hospital room and Charlie's still lying in the bed. So Mulder stays here and says that he's going to get help. Scully goes to the house to try and help with that, and she actually gets thrown around the room with an invisible force. Which it's almost a shame we didn't get to hear Scully talk about that at the end of the episode. Like, you know, she's the skeptic. She's the one who doesn't believe things and doesn't get to see as much as Mulder, conveniently. But it would have been nice for her to, like, say, hey, something threw me across the room and I didn't see anything. And even if she thinks she just didn't catch it, you know, a look at whoever it was, there's no way she could think it was the little boy who's like 8 years old, right? She was thrown up through the air into the wall. Something powerful did that. So it would have been nice to just see her contemplate that a little bit, maybe question it, maybe see her be a little bit shaken by that element. But she doesn't really even bring it up, to be honest. We don't have time for that. But Mulder calls the Calusari, and they come in and do their ritual. They have Mulder help pin the boy down, which is kind of traumatizing for Mulder because the kid's screaming and yelling. But it's very typical exorcism stuff, where the kid's pleading out in pain and saying that they're hurting him. But it's all a trick, obviously, to get him to stop this ritual. But he starts acting evil, like he starts growling and the teeth go kind of sharp and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, but I thought this was the good kid, and the bad kid was with the mom, and the spirit's also there. But there's also a spirit still in this kid. Like, like I say, everything was a little bit messy in terms of like how it was all working for me to really get completely on board. I was always aware of all the little inconsistencies and things that didn't feel like they were clicking together. Maybe in the original script, all of this made sense, but stuff gets cut for time to be more succinct, to fit into the time slot, whatever it is. But it is a bit messy for me. They do a little sort of ominous thing where the main guy says to Mulder, "Look away, or he'll know your face and he'll recognize you." And after it's all done, Mulder couldn't help but look at the kid during the ritual. At the end of the episode, the main guy from the Calusari says, "And you should be careful. He knows you." And it kind of ends in that ominous note. Well, aside from a little bit of Mulder narration, just kind of saying that this was a weird case of possession or something. Which, I don't know if they'll ever bring this back up. It seems like it's so broad that anything that's satanic could reference the fact that Satan knows who Mulder is, if this was indeed Satan. But that's one of the other murky elements for me. Like, is it the ghost of the twin that's evil, or is it Satan, or something akin to Satan? Or is it the idea that, like, Satan took the soul of the dead twin, and so it's the dead twin, but it's the dead twin aided by Satan kind of thing? I don't know. Like I say, it's a bit messy, and I don't think it makes all that stuff particularly clear in the episode, because it doesn't seem like it maybe has solid answers, at least in the final script. But regardless, there's entertaining parts to it. There's definitely some moments that are fun and silly or whatever. But there's also definitely some moments in the investigation where it feels like they're focusing on parts that aren't as interesting, or the lore or the reason for all this is very inconsistent. Well, yeah. So that's my thoughts on this X-Files episode. Next time we have an episode called F Emasculata. If I'm saying that right, I had to think about it before I said it. F Emasculata. And immediately I see Dean Norris in the image, so I'm excited about that, because, nothing wrong with a bit of Hank from Breaking Bad. But here's the description on IMDb. As Scully investigates the spread of a deadly contagion at a prison, Mulder tracks down 2 escaped convicts infected with the disease. Oh, okay. That sounds fun. It's splitting them up again, but it's it's interesting. I was going to say, like, why is Mulder the one chasing them? Surely, like, leaving Scully in a prison puts her in danger. But thinking about it, she's the medical one. She's probably examining, like, prior, deceased or dead people or whatever. So, fair enough, right? It probably makes sense in the episode. But I was thinking that in this episode, though, when he's like, you go to the house and take on the evil child. I'm just going to stay at the hospital. I'm getting help, right? I'm doing something. But it was the much safer of the jobs. Unless, I suppose, you look at it from the point of view that Satan has now got a personal vendetta with Mulder. I guess in that sense, Mulder has the long-term worst job of the two, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, this one sounds fine. Contagion does sound different from... I don't know if we've done like a disease episode quite. I mean, well, I suppose we had that one in the submarine recently. That was kind of a disease to an extent. Yeah, I mean, they've definitely had things, but I don't know if they've dealt with a contagion in that, like, they're looking for how it's spreading and like a sort of, Contagion the movie or Outbreak or whatever. I don't know if we've quite done that. Maybe we haven't. I'm just forgetting about it. But cool guest star, interesting premise. We'll see what that's like next time. That has been me, folks. I will see you guys next time. Keep watching X-Files, and of course you can support the content and help keep it coming. I wouldn't be able to do all these X-Files reviews and all the Person of Interest and all the other shows I do and movie podcasts over in Male Fuzz Movies, which you should go check out if you haven't. The Alien Romulus review is going out tomorrow from the Atomic Cinema Experiment over in Male Fuzz Movies, and it is a 2-hour and 46-minute episode, which is a long time to be talking about one movie. But very in-depth, so go and check out that tomorrow. Unless you're watching this late, in which case it's already up. But thank you very much. I'll see you guys soon. Keep watching TV. Oh, I never even said Patreon. I sort of started that and then got sidetracked with plugging Ace. Patreon.com/MaleFuzzTV or YouTube membership if that's more your thing. Any support from any direction, absolutely appreciated. I'll see you guys next time. Have you got any vanilla?